Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. We had a lovely long weekend, for which I'm very grateful. My macro thoughts are that the dollar will eventually snap higher, and this is an opportunity to re-enter the long dollar trade. Home thoughts: Christopher Rock, a man needs a little madness, or else he never dares to cut the rope and be free. And that is a quote from Nikos Kazantzakis. And then CPIM Speak tweeted a photograph of Satyajit Ray, who's this extraordinary Indian film director, and one of my favorites, I must admit, but incredibly slow moving, moves at a pace that rural folk were moving 100 years ago or so. And of course, it's too slow for today's world, and I find few people have the patience, but he is truly a remarkable film director, and if you ever get a chance to see any of his films, they're translated and subtitled. He once drove his young family from Addis Ababa into Nairobi in a Volkswagen microbus, which I thought was pretty good. I'd love to do something like that. I cannot tell you how many times we broke down, his son Juan recalls. I remember my father fixing the generator by moonlight and the nuts and bolts falling into the sand. This morning it was an extraordinary moon at 6 a.m. and I'll put up a photograph of it. Political reflections: dozens of Arab Special Forces soldiers arrived in Aden on Sunday. This is being denied, but we're in the fog of war, aren't we? On Sunday, and deployed alongside local fighters against Yemen's Houthi militia, a militia spokesman said. And I tweeted yesterday when I saw that Yemen will not be a cakewalk, and the way will not be strewn with the rose petals. And if you go back in history, the Yemenis are a very obdurate lot. And I know they've been bombed mercilessly, but I think once you put your boots on the ground, you're in a whole different ballgame. Crisis atmosphere in ruling circles was expressed in the timing of the changes announced in a communique issued at 4 a.m. and that of itself was noteworthy. Nayef is often referred to as Americans' favorite Saudi. The House of Saud, this is the New Yorker, one of the world's largest and richest royal families, experienced a quiet coup within its ranks shortly before dawn on Wednesday. King Salman canned his crown prince, appointed a tough security official as the new heir. He named a second in line to the throne, a young son with limited experience, and he removed the world's longest-serving foreign minister, who was responsible for building the alliance between Riyadh and Washington under 7 American presidents since 1975. A longer list of abrupt royal decrees was announced in an early morning television bulletin. Senior princes were then assembled at a Riyadh palace to pledge loyalty to the new order of succession. New Crown Prince is Mohammed bin Nayef, the king's nephew, educated in Oregon, and has coordinated closely with US intelligence on counter-terrorism for years. As Interior Minister, he gained renown by crushing Al-Qaeda's campaign to overthrow the monarchy a decade ago. He's also in charge of the rehabilitation program for captured Al-Qaeda members, including former prisoners released from Guantanamo Bay. Said to have been the target for at least 4 assassination attempts, he had a particularly close call in 2009 when he agreed to receive a militant on Saudi Arabia's most wanted list who was based in the Yemen and offered to turn himself in. The prince dispatched his personal plane to pick him up at the border. After arriving at Nayef's palace in Jeddah, the man detonated a bomb. Hidden in a body cavity, the prince was injured. From his hospital bed, he said at the meeting it was a mistake. Often referred to as America's favorite Saudi. I think there's been plenty of movement, evidently. Lots of tactics, but not sure there is a real strategy and or end game that I can see. The Egyptian president met with the Saudi King Salman, I think over the weekend, and of course the Saudis are a big benefactor and supporter of Sisi. Robert Fisk, who is bombing whom? in the Middle East, he asks. Let me try to get this right. The Saudis are bombing Yemen because they fear the Shia Houthis are working for the Iranians. The Saudis are also bombing ISIS in Iraq and ISIS in Syria. So are the UAE. The Syrian government is bombing its enemies in Syria, and the Iraqi government is also bombing its enemies in Iraq, America, France, Britain, Denmark, Holland, Australia, and, believe it or not, Canada are bombing ISIS in Syria and ISIS in Iraq, partly on behalf of the Iraqi government. I'm even more amazed, as am I, that my flights from Beirut, well, I didn't fly from Beirut but elsewhere, to the Gulf have gone untouched by the blitz boys of so many Arab and Western states as they career around the skies of Mesopotamia and the Levant. Another general close to Barack Obama says that half the senior commanders in ISIS have been liquidated. Nonsense, but it's worth knowing just how General Pierre de Villiers, chief of the French Defense Staff, summed up his recent visits to Baghdad and Iraqi Kurdistan. He reported back to Paris, Iraq is in a state of total decay. The French word he used was decomposition. I suspect that applies to most of the Middle East. I think he's right. Rahul Kanwal tweeted, the most retweeted world leaders, first is the Pope Pontifex, second is King Salman, third Nicolas Maduro, fourth Barack Obama, and fifth Narendra Modi. Festive Baltimore rallies in hope after the police were charged. I put up an image that NDTV tweeted. I'll come back to that battle of the streets which we're seeing in Bujumbura and we're seeing in Baltimore. CNN have confirmed 2 dead after shooting at Muhammad Art cartoon contest in Texas. Moving to the currency markets, the euro is last trading at 111.55. The dollar index firm, well, when I walked in this morning, 95.21. Firmed 0.7% on Friday. That's after 7 consecutive sessions of declines. Japanese yen around the 120.10 level. Swissy 0.9335, pound is at 151.36, Aussie 0.7820, India rupee 63.684, South Korean 110.8065, Rial back above 301.46, that's an interesting signal, the Egyptian pound 765.91 and the rand 1204.76. Dollar index, I'll put up a 1-year chart. It touched 94.399 on Thursday, which was a 2-month low, and there's been a string of disappointing US data which has convinced some investors, I'm not included, because I think that for Yellen it's actually it's about normalization now and less about the data. But some investors are convinced that the US will not hike, maybe at all this year. 2 top US central bankers said on Friday the Fed could well raise rates as soon as June, so long as economic data strengthens as expected from a dismal first quarter. No one is exactly sure if it will. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 1-year chart. You can see we've had quite a strong bounce. Bond yields on both sides of the Atlantic moved dramatically higher yesterday. The move was driven out of Europe, where German 10-year bond yields rose more than 20 basis points since Tuesday. And that was the biggest 2-day increase since November 2011. Jamie at Reuters tweeted May 1st, euro plus 3.6% this week. On track for its best week since October 2011, indeed. Sterling, last time I had a look, 151.35. It had a torrid session on Friday. We've got, it's already on tenterhooks ahead of the May 7 general election. And it got stung on Friday by a survey showing British manufacturing growth slowed sharply in April. Britain votes on Thursday in what is expected to be the tightest election in decades. Commodity markets, gold 1183.81. Had a tough session on Friday as well. Crude oil, now this is an interesting one. It's now at 59.28.5. It had a very, very strong month last month. China, however, posted its biggest drop in factory activity in a year. This is a private business survey showed on Monday. Chinese data is weaker, but it seems the oil market has had a limited reaction so far. and it's trading actually very bullishly as if it wants to go higher. But let's see how it behaves today. It's been on tear actually. It's had a huge rebound in the last few weeks. Moving to sub-Saharan Africa, Chatrezien tweeted, "Let's hope that this can be a sign of hope and peace over Bujumbura this morning." And it's a tweet of a rainbow. My piece over the weekend is about Burundi. Eyes on Burundi, spillover risks from debacle loom. Paul Virilio is a French cultural theorist and urbanist, and I've spoken about him separately, but he really is very good. He's best known for his writings about technology as it has developed in relation to speed and power, with diverse references to architecture, the arts, the city, and the military. In his book Speed and Politics, he says the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. As we look around the world today, we can see a battle for the street, from the streets of Bujumbura to the streets of Baltimore. In November last year, I wrote about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa and concluded that we need to ask ourselves, how many people can an incumbent shoot stone cold dead in this situation? 100, 1,000, 10,000? I said, this is the other point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. And I said the preeminent point to note is that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. President Pierre Nkurunziza, a Pentecostal former aerobics instructor and rebel leader with his own presidential soccer team, is now in the crosshairs. On Tuesday last week, his government blocked access to the most popular social media services, including Facebook, Twitter, and WhatsApp, which had been used to share photos, video, and news, as well as organize protest movements. All we expect from our leaders is the understanding that whatever was accepted 10, 20 years ago no longer goes, said a human rights lawyer in Dakar to Reuters. What happened in Senegal and Burkina will happen elsewhere if leaders maintain their efforts to stay in power, which is a theory that I have as well. There is an internationalization of African youth who are dreaming and thinking the same way, he said. They cannot imprison hope. They will fail. Youth will continue to mobilize. I said there's a famous French saying that goes, plus ça change, plus ça même chose. What it means is everything changes, but everything stays the same. The more things change, the more they stay the same. However, I don't think that's the case. I think there was a lot of optimism that the peaceful election in Nigeria marked an inflection point in Africa, and Nigeria was neat, but probably a counter-trend moment. Our neighborhood, that's the East African neighborhood, continues to deteriorate. South Sudan has essentially imploded. Burundi is teetering on an implosion. The spillover risks from a Burundi debacle are therefore to see. So the demographic dividend is demanding new leadership, it seems to me. And on that note, I'll put up a copy of that book that I was referring to, Paul Virilio, and Speed and Politics. The revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine, and itself becomes a motor, a machine of attack, in other words, a producer of speed. He's well worth reading. Got some very interesting ideas. 3 died in grenade attacks in Burundi capital. More than 10 were hurt. This is from the police. Put up a photograph Reuters published of a child running across a line of policemen during protests against the president. That was from April the 30th. Burundi has called the opposition protesters terrorists, according to the BBC. And apparently they've called a halt for 2 days. But I don't know whether that included Saturday and Sunday, or I'm not sure. We'll have to keep an eye on it. We have seen the anger. We accept that people have been frustrated, Zuma said in an interview with the South African Broadcasting Corporation on Wednesday. This must now stop because we cannot continue killing one another. Tension comes against the backdrop of a weakening economy, a 24% jobless rate. Government blames criminals rather than xenophobia for much of the violence. South Africa's king's more trouble than the worth, says The Economist. In Zulu, the king, this is Zwelithini, is modestly known as the mouth that tells no lies. When King Goodwill Zwelithini, the Zulu traditional head, made anti-foreigner remarks recently that whipped up attacks on black migrants, South African political leaders were loath to rebuke him. He claimed his words had been mistranslated. The response was similar when King Goodwill called homosexual relationships rotten a few years back. Then as now, some South Africans wondered why King Goodwill continues to be bankrolled by taxpayers given his pronouncements that clash with the country's progressive constitution. And when I wrote that piece the previous weekend, I said at the street level, talking about South Africa, this has become a tinderbox and is proving attractive for pyromaniacs like the king. South African all-share up 10.9% year to date. It's below 55,000, above which it closed only twice ever. That was last week. Dollar rand to 1204.76 when I looked at the last. Egyptian pound 765.91. Egyptian stock market down 2.97% this year. Nigerian all-share had a strong session on Thursday, up 1.93%. It's up 3.16% year to date. Nigerian stocks rally as Kenya sinks in first divergence since 2013. Interesting article by Bloomberg. How Nigerian equities posted the biggest gain in sub-Saharan Africa in April. Relief rally on peaceful handover, helped by a reversal of investor flows that had seen the market benefit at Kenya's expense for the first time in 16 months. And very interesting correlations he's drawn. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 1.02% in 2015. Lawmakers in Mozambique reject autonomy plan for 6 provinces. Renamo had been demanding this. Mozambique's parliament on Thursday threw out a proposal to grant autonomy to 6 of the country's 11 provinces, an outcome which the main opposition party warned could lead to a return to civil war. But listen to some of the comments that came out of this. Where are we? The proposed law was introduced by the Mozambican National Resistance, or Renamo, the main opposition party since the end of a civil war that it waged against the government from 1976 to 1992. The ruling Front for the Liberation of Mozambique, or Frelimo, used its majority in parliament to vote down the proposal, which it argued violated the constitution. Now, we will let the people decide what is the next step, Antonio Muchanga, a Renamo lawmaker and party spokesman, said in an interview at the parliament. Asked what would happen if supporters of the autonomy plan chose war, Muchanga said, "Let's go. Who are we to refuse what the people want?" Africa's 10 most bulletproof businesses in conflict and why you should stock beer, mattresses and bicycles. Interesting article, Mail and Guardian. The Malawian kwacha is the only African currency which has strengthened against the dollar this year. And I'll put up an image I got from Beyond Bricks, and that's quite an interesting outcome, is it not? The Republic of Congo bans full-face veils in attempt to prevent religious extremist attacks. I like this photograph. Residents walk in the shanty town of Boa Vista in the Angolan capital, Luanda. And this article in The Guardian, coverage of sect tragedy underlines how far Angola is from press freedom. Very interesting piece on the 16th of April. Police and defense forces killed scores of pilgrims on Mount Sumi in Angola's central highlands to avenge the deaths of 8 police officers, allegedly at the hands of members of a Christian sect known as the Seventh Day, the Light of the World. The tragedy underscores the extent of which the government endeavours to control the flow of information on the case, undermining the free press. In a botched operation, the police officers were killed as they attempted to arrest the sect leader, Jose Kaluputeka, during worship. More than 3,000 followers from many parts of the country had camped at Mount Sumi in Huambo province for the sect summit. Then he goes back to some soldiers and they all tell me how pilgrims were mown down indiscriminately many of them praying to the end. They all gave accounts of how makeshift shelters were set alight with people inside. There were also stories of police officers sparing women and children who escaped down the mount but were unable to elude the manhunt that ensued. These officers also tell me how they bore witness to the filling of mass graves dug by an excavator in the nearby village of Kusamba. And This is Africa Online is saying that Angola's economy is in deep water. Interesting article, and it is, because it's so monoline and dependent upon oil. Oil accounts for 95% of Angolan exports and 75% of government revenues, making the economy dangerously exposed to an oil price that has nearly halved since mid-2015. Coming to Kenya, well, there are all kinds of excitement. Let me tell you about it. Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton were in town. I like this tweet. Bill Clinton, remembering those lost and injured, hopeful we can continue to build a world that embraces our common humanity. He paid his respect. Robin Creel, who was with ENCA and is now with CNN, tweeted this photograph. US Secretary of State John Kerry touches down in Nairobi, met by the Foreign Minister Amina Mohammed. And then my favourite of all the photographs was this, which was a selfie of John Kerry made a new friend at Daphne Sheldrake Elephant Orphanage in Nairobi National Park. And isn't it a nice photograph for all those elephant lovers? And it's such a lovely place to visit. If you ever get a chance, do go. And if you've got young children, I mean, they'll just love it. Tiny little elephants. Kerry in Kenya to offer help against militants. That's what his officials are saying. US Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in Kenya on Sunday to offer help in countering Somali al-Shabaab militants who have staged deadly attacks there and elsewhere in East Africa. We will be looking at additional ways that we may be able to support Kenyan efforts to fight al-Shabaab, the official said, without giving details. One major message is that fighting terrorism requires a multifaceted approach, the US official said. Radio Rama tweeted Labor Day Rais Uhuru Kenyatta atangaza nyongeza ya 12% ya mashashara, which means the president chose to put up the minimum wage by 12% on Labor Day. Kenya shilling has been very soft lately, last trading at 94.934. Safaricom closed at a fresh record high on Thursday. It's up 23.843% year to date and at a record high. They're going to release results on the 7th of May. Crown Paints reported its full year profit before tax sank 55%. Revenue was up 17%. Profit before tax down 55%. Earnings per share less than a shilling versus 9 shillings and 1 cent last time. But final dividend of 1 shilling 0.75 cents, which is nearly more than twice the earnings per share. Bonus issue of 2 shares for every 1 held. That's going to hold up the price. Very poor results, and actually I came across one of the principals at dinner, and he said he had tremendous problems in Tanzania. NSE 20 is down 0.4107% year to date. Kenya Airways, according to the Business Daily and other newspapers, has initiated talks with an airline from the Middle East in a bid to raise cash in exchange for equity. KQ management would not confirm or deny the engagement with a potential partner on Saturday. CEO Buvi Gunze is on record saying that the airline is looking for a partner with deep pockets. Those in the know say Qatar Airways and Emirates are among those national carriers is looking for a potential partner. On the 13th of April, in that piece I wrote about KQ, I said, we need to speak with the big Gulf carriers like Emirates and Etihad Airlines to see how we can get them to take a stake. So I'm pleased that they're thinking that way finally. The price of tea at the Mombasa auction has gone up 33.8% in the last 1 year, helped by poor weather that has cut the supply of green leaf. That's quite a good bounce. Bidco tweeted the team has worked tirelessly to help you experience a happy, healthy life. Meet the team. Base Titanium put out a press release. There's been a big furore around VAT and royalties. And it's a very interesting press release. Misleading comments linking the payments the company is making royalties to the VAT refunds that it's claiming from the government. Base Titanium has a refund claim of approximately 2 billion shillings for VAT paid in Kenya, most of which was accumulating during the construction phase of the Kwale Mineral Sands project. Base spent approximately 26 billion building the project, which now produces minerals exclusively for the export market. This means that under the VAT Act, these products are zero-rated for VAT purposes. Base is therefore only seeking a refund of the VAT it has already remitted to the government of Kenya, in which it has a legal right to claim. Base is working closely with the KRA and the Treasury, the two arms of government responsible for this issue, to ensure the claim is processed according to the law. It should be noted that VAT refunds are applicable to all export-oriented producers, and that this issue is not unique to the mining sector. It cuts across many sectors of the Kenyan economy. Base would also like to highlight that a proportion of the VAT being claimed was accrued in the construction of infrastructure necessary for the project's development. Base spent close to 5 billion shillings building a dam, water storage facility, a mine access road, a power line and substation, whose ownership has subsequently been transferred to Kenya Power, as well as a port and ship loading facility. This infrastructure will continue to have an important economic impact in Kenya and Kwale long after mining operations have ceased. Paid royalties of 225.666 million shillings, the government of Kenya, and basically delinking it. And obviously they need that money to pay some loans, and it's going to be a terrible debacle if this problem continues, particularly for the Eurobond, which will react immediately to any perceived foot dragging by the government. Safaricom, as I said, closed at a record on Thursday. It's up 23.843%. That's a storming, blistering start to 2015. Nation Media announced a change in the C-suite. Joe Muganda, VABL, I knew him from there, has come in as the CEO. Share price popped 3.53% higher on Thursday. TPS, which I thought reported very creditable results in the circumstances. Cirrus franchise have had to pay big defense, but remains, because the only tourism proxy at the stock exchange remains soft. KCB closed at 63 on heavy volume. Britam, which has been all over the shop, rallied 4.76% on Thursday to close at 22. Although it's down 26.05% year to date, it's rebounded 8.64% since closing at a 2015 low on April the 22nd. Britam issued a string of announcements culminating in the latest one, which affirmed that Mr. Dawood Rawat's stake in Britam will now be held by the government of Mauritius via the State Insurance Company of Mauritius. Concerns around that stake being spilt on the market were very high. Obviously, EABL firmed up 0.3125, and it was a pleasure meeting Ivan, who was a great sport. And ARM, interestingly, was very strong at the close on Thursday. Once again, I really am grateful that you stopped by. Appreciate it. And once again, I hope you have a great week.